Welcome to the Prime Venture Partners podcast. I am delighted to have with us Dinesh Agarwal, founder and CEO of IndiaMART, a relatively recently listed company, but one of the stalwarts in the B2B space in India. Welcome to the show, Dinesh.
Thank you. Thank you, Amit.
It's good to see you after all the years we interacted in Delhi back when I was at Make My Trip. So, Dinesh, maybe you can talk to us about the founding story of IndiaMART. I know you've probably shared it many times, but for the benefit of our listeners, how did you stumble upon this notion of wanting to do this back, 20, 25 years ago when you started this venture?
I think, I was a normal software engineer coming from a traditional small business family. I simply wanted to, first do a job and get some industry experience and get to learn what's happening around the world. Fortunately, I worked for two great companies here in India, CMC Limited and CDOT, working on some of the very big projects here in India, Government of India project. And then in US with HCL America, 2-3 projects. And I always wanted to come back and settle here in India. So that was for sure. I didn't want my computer science degree to go waste in US. While I was in US, few incidences happened where I was always very fascinated with the networking communication kind of technology and convergence kind of technology. But as the web evolved, as the internet evolved, I think I had some very good incidences of learning how powerful the internet can be and how powerful it can be for the convergence that we keep thinking about. And believe me or not, it was 15th of August, 1995, when Prime Minister from Lal Killa announced that now internet is here in India. The very next day, I told my manager that I want to go back to India. So that's how I came back to India without any idea of what exactly am I going to do. And while I came back to India, first I thought, can I become an ISP? ISP was not allowed. It was licensed only to BSNL. Then one fine day, me and my friends were sitting in a cafe. And he said, why don't you look at making websites? And so I said, yeah, this is a good idea. It's still close to my heart, internet and everything. And as we started looking for websites, how to make websites, whom to make it for, we discovered that there are two kinds of markets. Either we could do mostly for Indian businesses, Indian corporates, but in those days, Indian user base was very minuscule, hardly 5,000, 10,000 users in India. The other part was, exporters. So I decided that we do exporters websites. And while trying to find the list of exporters, I came upon some directories, and those directories were hardly updated. So that's how the idea of internet-based exporters directory was born. And that's what we named IndiaMART. That's how, you just go with one idea and take a little bit further and refine from there. And that's how it went.
Yeah. What were some other interesting inflection points in the journey? Because like I said, you've been very, very perseverant through this journey. So what were other defining points? Like you said, the internet coming to India in 95, particularly in B2B, right? Because it was obviously not very sexy. Everybody wants to do B2C. And yet probably it's like just as big, if not a bigger opportunity.
Yeah, so I think I saw that in the B2C, there was no revenue. And when I started, my foremost goal was to create a business which has its own revenue and its own profit, at least not a loss. And that's where B2B sounded more like the thing to do because it had revenue from day one. Otherwise, I didn't know the word venture capital. I didn't know when somebody first time called me in 1998 from Gujarat Venture Finance, I told them, sir, humko koi loan nahi chahiye. I mean, just a software engineer. I didn't know nothing. In 1998, or when I visited Mumbai and Rediff had painted the whole Mumbai red, I didn't know what am I doing wrong? Why are we not getting this kind of money? Are they getting all this money from? I didn't even know they were planning an IPO. So, I mean, we were quite naive from that perspective, trying to create a business. And second inflection point was that when I learned that I need to create an exporters directory, and here in India, out of the 50,000 exporters, not even 500 had an internet connection or a PC they were the most advanced because they were interacting with foreign customers. They were visiting foreign countries. So they were more likely to have an exposure to computers and internet, but it was still very minuscule. Out of the 50,000, not even 1%. So what we started to build the directory and to build the belief in the business took a more of a B2C kind of approach, which is a freemium business listing and inquiry forwarding. So for 5 years, starting from 1997 till 2001 or so, we did free listing of every business, every export business. And every day when the inquiries came to us for those businesses, we printed them in the evening, faxed them overnight, and next day send those inquiries by post.
Wow.
For 5 years, every day. So, I mean, it was like an online to offline connection between people would remember us by the end of third year that yet another business inquiry through IndiaMART. So that was another big inflection point. And the third one that I would recall is probably the .com burst, because we were doing good revenues, and if not profitable, at least near profitable or break-even kind of revenues. And when this 99 thing happened and 99-2000 thing happened, everybody got carried away. And we were still getting some revenues. And I think when the .com burst happened, since we continued to have good revenues, I think we got a very good talent attraction, very good media attraction, and very good customer, because in those days, .com had become like a fly-by-night operators. So we used to, take customers to our office and take them full round, because we had like 18,000 square feet office by then. So I think those are the 2-3 inflection points that happened during our export-import journey. That continued for 14 years. And then we pivoted completely post 2007, 2008 into a domestic B2B. And that's another story altogether.
Yeah, I would love to come to the domestic B2B story in a second. But before we do that, since you said you had a viable business model, how were you charging the fees in those first 5 years when you were doing this sort of online, offline kind of hybrid of faxing and all that? Were you charging mainly the buyers, or were the suppliers also paying you?
We were always supplier side monetization and buyer side always free. Even within the supplier side, you can list on IndiaMART for free. You can receive inquiries for free. To come on the top of any category or in the first few listings of any category, you pay money. And that's what has been the business model. Initial 4-5 years, the business model was more like building websites or building microsites. And we used to charge per page or per 10-page package, mostly, anywhere between 10,000 rupees to 50,000 rupees to build the website. And then the second thing was, we said that these websites are not only built like a brochure for you, we will do promotion of your website. And we will do promotion by 2 ways. One, we will try and optimize to see what keywords people are searching on Yahoo and Google and Alta Vista and those search engines. And we will try to do, search SEO as a word was not known. Probably we would have coined that word, search engine optimization. The second thing that we will do is we will give you a top listing in IndiaMART directory. And IndiaMART directory was built over the years. So for first 5 years, I think the revenue model was purely building websites, designing, hosting, search engine optimization, and getting a linking. And over the period of time, I think IndiaMART linking became the most powerful. IndiaMART listing became the most powerful.
Wonderful. So switching gears and talking about, when did the opportunity for domestic B2B kind of dawn and actually become probably bigger than your import export / website building, SEO generating kind of business? Were there some early signs of that made you trigger? I remember B2C, right? Like a lot of the Indian B2C businesses, whether it's Make My Trip or Flipkart or others, they started in the 2007 to 2009 timeframe. Love to hear about that story.
Yeah, so I think post 2001, there was a 2 years of economic downturn across the world. September 11 and then Afghanistan war and everything. But then from 2003 to 2007, I think was the golden years for India in terms of domestic economy as well as export. And we continued to grow leaps and bounds. I remember by 2006, when we had 10 years of celebration, we had 10,000 customers. probably churning out at 10,000, 20,000 rupees per annum ARPU. And that's how that became. By the time we decided to pivot, we were like a 50 crore rupees business with nice 30% profit on the export import side. But then during 2007-8, few things started to change. One, domestic internet adoption went very high during that 2005 to 2008 timeframe. It became very reliable. Internet became reliable. Second, mobile phones, the SMS-based mobile phones, and then the smartphones launch. That became very powerful. Third, a lot of domestic inquiry, people started to come on IndiaMART and started to inquire about things. And fourth, I could see that now exports are not going to go anywhere over the next couple of years. And that turned out to be true. That was, I don't know, where did I get that intuition that exports are now kind of saturating from India, because somehow it has proven wherever you go anywhere in the world, everything was made in China. And Alibaba IPO happened in 2007, September, with the $17 billion market cap overnight. I think so. Those are some of the things that I started to think whether export is something that we want to continue to do, or whether domestic is going to be a bigger opportunity, because domestic had this network effect of buyer and supplier being at the same place. Otherwise, we had to go and market ourselves into different countries to say that, IndiaMART, and if you want to source something from India, but that didn't have a network effect. Buyer and supplier were in two different geographies. Here in domestic, buyer and suppliers are the same people. And right. Even better than B2C, because buyers and suppliers are both businesses. So B2B is, so today 33% of our suppliers are also our buyers.
Yeah, every buyer is also a supplier and vice versa, or most of them
and possibly vice versa. So we decided in 2008 that this time, instead of, by 2008, we hadn't raised any money. So we were all internal accrual, profitable, like that. But in 2008, me and Brijesh sat down and said that, no, if we want to build a domestic business, let's raise money and build it in a faster manner, because we would not have the time on our side, just like we had the last 10 years of slow growth, profitable. So I think we raised money first, and then we decided what domestic business we will do. And in 2010, we did blitz scaling. I remember in 52 weeks, we opened 52 offices.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to be one of my questions is, how did you get access to all these suppliers, right? And what was your own distribution strategy like?
Yeah, so we would do aggregation like anything. We would stand in front of every B2B exhibition. We would participate in every B2B exhibition. We would have field sales force to go industry to industry to collect their visiting cards and to aggregate that. We would do free listing, online free listing by people. So we did everything, I think even from newspaper, any kind of classifieds, wherever we could find any businesses. The whole idea was that if you are in a business, it got to be listed on IndiaMART. And we did a lot of aggregation to say that since you advertise here, since your card was found here, would you like to register free of cost? And that we did using all mechanisms.
Understood. So now, of course, I was just looking through your website. You have 97,000 categories, right? And literally millions and millions of suppliers. So can you just, for our listeners, give us a scope of both the range of what you already reach, but also the size of the market, if any, right? In terms of what the opportunity is.
So, according to some studies by Walmart and others, there's a give and take about $1 trillion of B2B market today in India, which includes all retail, wholesale, everything. Now, coming to the categories, look at the categories, variety of the categories, whether it is engineering products, whether it is clothing, whether it is food, whether it is plastic packaging, whether it is chemical, intermediates, pharmaceutical intermediate, machinery, components, wire, cable, their component, their raw material. So for every end product that you end up consuming for 100 rupees, probably 1,000 rupees worth of 10 rupees, 20 rupees, 30 rupees worth of B2B transaction would have happened for you to do one transaction of 100 rupees at the end of consumer. And imagine the variety of the products and companies that we have on our portal, whether it is Tata Steel or whether it is Tata Motors. So from steel to motor and everything in between.
Right.
So whether it is Birla Cement or one of those cement companies, and whether it is tiles or the homes, so and everything in between. So what happens is that there is enough market, and these are not digitized, and these will, unlike in the US or unlike in Western worlds where the real estate is still cheaper, they still have large format B2B stores. Here in India, we don't even have large format B2C stores. I mean,
Correct.
malls is a very new phenomena. Malls can still survive with 30-40% gross margin. B2Bs won't survive, because either if you do it here in Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, the real estate will kill you. And if you do it in Bahrain, which is my hometown, there is not enough market. So there is no way that we could go to the same strategy as what US has gone through. I mean, our evolution will not happen that way. It will have to happen through digital means only.
That's correct.
There is enough market and there is enough headway for long headway to go.
And the breadth and the diversity of categories is also quite mind-boggling. Can you talk to us about maybe a couple of interesting ones? Maybe like a flagship category that has always been there and done well. I don't know if it's in construction or steel or whatever it is. And then maybe some categories that have emerged in the last few years that have surprised you to say, wow, like even this is coming online or becoming active online. I mean, everybody had a signpost on the web, but really doing business and transactions.
Yeah. So to begin with, when we started export-import, the most common categories that you will see were apparel and handicrafts. Some BBC correspondent went to Muradabad and asked, do you guys use internet for, I'm told, so they said, no, we don't use internet. But they said, no, IndiaMART gave your name. So they said, we use IndiaMART. We don't use internet.
That's correct.
So that's the kind of affinity we built in the early on. Then over the time, we found that, construction and machinery and component, they became quite popular. For example, chappal making machine, dona making machine, agarbatti making machine. These are like the categories which went into domestic B2B across every district. Every district would have a local chappal manufacturer, local pouch manufacturer, local, plastic cup manufacturer, plastic glass manufacturer, those kind of things. Then probably came the LED revolution. LED bulb kit will come from China or will come from there. And then everybody is, in Ghaziabad, I remember hundreds and thousands of ladies making LED bulbs, buying from IndiaMART and then selling it to the local side. What new categories we discovered, especially in the last 2 years? First thing, when last year February, I started to see suddenly there is a demand for sanitizer going up. And we didn't even have a corona here. I'm talking mid-February. Mid-February, some of the categories started to go up. And before we could even understand and respond to it, we were under a severe lockdown. By the next 1 month, what's going on, why these categories are getting export traction. And then suddenly there was this rush of medical and mask and sanitizer and these related categories. I remember after the lockdown, we couldn't do anything because all our revenues used to come from field sales force and everybody was locked up at home. So we said, nothing doing. Like everybody in the entire organization is now category manager. And we are all going to work on medical and safety and food and these kind of categories. I remember, calling undergarment manufacturers to see if they can build masks, calling helmet manufacturers to see if they can build a face shield. calling, shampoo guys to see if they can do packing of sanitizers. So and then the second wave came. In the second wave, we didn't know in the first wave that there is something called oxygen required and there's something called BiPAP, CPAP required. But in the second wave, it was a completely, again, different challenge. So I think newer categories we discovered like medical, pharmaceutical, safety, these kind of things. So over the time, we have seen that IndiaMART has created a large space for itself, but hasn't worked on every category. I think every time I look at IndiaMART, I find it like, very skin deep, hardly any depth. You as an outsider can see, okay, there's a lot of depth. But when I see, or when any industry expert will see his category, he will see it is still very skin deep. So there's enough to do. And if you look at, these B2C companies, large B2C companies, Flipkart, Amazon, and these kind of people, they have a very limited set of categories, 2,000 categories, and, huge volumes in that, whether it is mobile phone or whether it is clothing or whether it is, some of the items. But then there is a huge long tail before you buy any consumer product. When you buy one shirt, imagine the button and the thread and the chain and the collar and the packaging material and the box and the label and everything that goes behind that.
Yeah. So actually, that leads me to two different questions, Dinesh. One is, if you look at any marketplace, right, including Alibaba in China, or for that matter, in US, B2C or B2B, over time we observe this phenomenon of bundling and unbundling. So what happens is the category get deep enough that it needs more nuances, right? So whether it is, we've seen a lot of startups pitching just handicraft, just B2B handicrafts, right, or B2B apparel, or it could be even cross-border startups and cross-border commerce. What are the thresholds, right? And obviously, in a dream world, you would want to be, like you said, right, not skin deep, but mile deep in every category, and you would want to be broad enough in hundreds of thousands. But practically, it's not possible, right, to have both things, right? I assume your DNA is more, and the company's DNA is more on the search, discovery, breadth, rather than going deep.
Yeah.
So the question really is, how do you think about bundling and unbundling? So how do you decide whether, not just at a selection level or SKU level, that do you go deeper, get more suppliers, more products, etc., but also at an engagement, interaction, facility, purchase order, credit, financing, all that stuff? Like, if you can talk about both those dimensions.
Yeah, so I think the way I understand this, there are two things or three things. One is the verticalization. And I have seen, it sounds very fascinating that you have to have a Make My Trip, which is a vertically handling travel as my need. Or you have a Uber or a Ola, which handles my transportation, local transportation needs. Or similarly, Car Dekho, or similarly, Zomato or Swiggy kind of thing. But even in B2B, people have tried to make verticals word over in the last 25 years and not succeeded. Why? Because there is not enough buyer and seller traction to create a marketplace. And that's been the case for these 25 years. I remember vertical net kind of companies and those kind of companies in 99. And then why? Because there is a minimum buyer supplier threshold to be crossed before you can say that. Now, in US and in China, there may be 20 verticals, 20 large verticals, which are $1 billion plus. In India, there are hardly 4 verticals. Just a Make My Trip or an Ola and Zomato, and not even a real estate vertical, which is $1 billion, not even a job vertical, which is $1 billion, not even an automobile vertical. So the only ones big enough are travel transport and food. So I think in India, this verticalization may take maybe 10 years or so. But then by the time that verticalization happens, will I be able to go from skin deep to, if not mile deep, to a foot deep? And that's what is, Google is doing. So word over what is happening, this, what we call the super apps. Super apps are all neither skin deep nor mile deep. They're somewhere in between. Because the cost of switching and cost of branding of each vertical, whether or you creating a Delhi Mart or creating a Mumbai Mart or creating that, is difficult. The other strategy is very good, which you said. How do I build minimum common denominator functionality like CRM, like lead manager, like payment facilitation? How do I build that which cuts across everything, or accounting or invoicing, and that's what we have been trying to focus on in the last 2-3 years. So last 2-3 years, if you see, our strategy has been to build some other minimum common denominators which can create this marketplace even more important. So for example, our lead manager is now being used by 100,000 individual businesses in India every week. We are probably the largest CRM company in India now.
Fascinating. Switching gears, before we wrap up on the B2B side, if there are young entrepreneurs, right, just like maybe you were in 1995 or 1998, who are looking at B2B, what are some kind of tips and suggestions you would have for them, right? These are people just starting out, maybe 6 months into their venture, or looking at either a vertical or foot deep or whatever it is, right? What are some areas that you think are underserved, right? Even being a giant yourself.
Many areas, I think if we look at it two ways, one is what you can do globally and what you can do in India. So globally, I guess all the software that has been written in the last 25-30 years will have to be rewritten, because that software is no longer valid. That was on-premise desktop software. And that was a single user software. It was meant for employees. The other software was meant for customers. Now you need a software which your employees can log into, your customers can log into, your vendors can log into. They should be able to log into from mobile. They should be able to log into from desktop. They should be able to log into from different countries, different languages, different form factor. So I think, and this whole thing opens up a huge plethora of B2B opportunities. So I think on that side, I feel sitting from here, from India, earlier we were making only services-based products. Now I think we can make product-based product, and now most of the sales can also happen on online and remote sales. And there are some great examples like Freshdesk is there, which has created like this. So I think one on that side there is great example. On the other hand, within India, people need a lot of vertical solutions. And we just solve one small piece called discovery. I know it's the biggest piece, but still it solves only 20% of the problem. I think the 80% of the problems they are lying because earlier there were hardly 50 million computers or 100 million computers in India. Now suddenly everybody has already 500 million computers, and maybe going up to a billion computers, mobile held computers soon. So I think it opens up a lot of opportunity in terms of technology based solution. A lot of recent ones that I have seen in B2B are still trying to ape the trading. Whatever trading was happening, you are just trying to package it into a technology based trading and subsidizing by way of equity. So I think trading will not lead you to create a B2B. Unless you create solutions by way of technology.
Fantastic. As we wrap up here, I'd be remiss in not asking you about your own journey as an entrepreneur. What have you learned about yourself as you've gone? I know it will take much longer than 5 minutes, but just maybe some highlights. And what do you wish, if you could advise the Dinesh of even 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago, because the world has changed like 10 times over. What advice would you have for your younger self?
So one, I think you should take a very long term, because you are not making something for 3 years or 5 years. I think it should be a lifelong bet that you are going to work. If something changes, the next one has to be lifelong. So it's not that we didn't change. We changed from export to domestic. But when we started export, it was with the lifelong objective. And when we moved to domestic, now it's again a lifelong objective. So one, I think you have to take a very longer term view. I haven't seen businesses in the past being created and sold left, right, and center. Businesses are either built and built and built. So one is that. The second part is, I think there is no end to learning. You just keep trying, keep at it. Many people, I am not a very big fan of go big or go home. Why should I go home? I'll keep trying. Nobody tells me to go home. If you go home, you are anyway not part of the game anyway. So you just be there. Keep learning the tricks of the game, because there is no point quitting. Quitting is not advisable. You just keep participating, and don't die. Those are the only two things. Don't quit and don't die.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic high to end on, which is that keep going big, keep learning, don't quit, don't go home.
I always say everybody is born with at least 20% luck with an 80-20 principle. So if you try 5 times, you'll get lucky once.
I love it. Well, Dinesh, we could go on and on, but really, really appreciate you being on the Prime Venture Partners podcast. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope this helps.
Dear listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app for free, and you'll be the first one to know when new episodes are available. Just search for Prime Venture Partners podcast in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Castbox, or however you get your podcasts. Then hit subscribe. And if you have enjoyed the show, we would be really grateful if you leave us a review on Apple Podcast. To read the full transcript, find the link in the show notes.